Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Vallen, and this is the SaltyMod. Mod made by Leahim85 and has a lot more uses than most may think. I feel I should apologize straight up that I currently have the Santa hat on, but hey, it is, the end of December, and I'm making the vids during that time. But anyway, the SaltyMod adds in a lot of stuff. It namely adds in a lot of foods, armors, as you saw me wearing, interactions with living creatures, as well as a little bit of world spawn. And there's a bit of automation that you can work with as well. There's quite a bit that you can do with this mod. But let me start off with the basics. If you're fortunate enough, as you travel throughout the world, you may find such things as this, a salt lake bottom down here, making some kind of like dried up riverbed or something like that. And if you dig down underneath, you may find things like saline soil or salt lake bottoms, or even mineral mud blocks down underneath that. And or even some salt crystals if you're very fortunate. But this is just the beginning of the mod. You may also find salt ore just dotted around underground when you're down below. And let me get back to another area and I can start showing you some of the things you can make with this. And don't overlook the salt wart that might be growing on some of the saline soil nearby either. Here we are, back at my little salty workshop that I've got in the sky. That's right, it's a sky salty workshop. But there's a lot. As you can see here, there's a massive board of food. I will be going over that, but let me show you some of the other features. As you saw before, there was some different blocks that you have. You can craft a lot of these things up very simply. For instance, like salt bricks is made from salt blocks, which is made from salt, which is also made from pinches of salt. And something not to forget about is going to be the salt lamp, which is of course just a block of salt with a torch. Will just get you a lamp that will, well, just give off some light and also resemble the salt-like blocks. You might actually find blocks of salt like this in the world, or a salt ore which will be affected by luck on your tools. So therefore, if you have something that will increase drops from ores, then you can do so. Otherwise, you can always smelt it or something. You can use your different effects. You can always smelt it, but I recommend just mining it up with a pick, and you're likely to get some more salt in this case. And what good is salt? Well, the most traditional sense is going to be using it in combination with food. But like I said, I will get to that shortly, as food is not as impressive as some of the other things you can do with this mod. So allow me to demonstrate some of the stuff. For instance, there is salt wart, which, yes, it is a decorative item. And it is just started off as this little tiny little twig here, and it cannot be planted on your standard grass block. If you look here, this is your standard grass block. This is one that is slightly saline, which means it's kind of salty, and you'll probably find it around one of those salt beds that I showed you. And if you have any slightly saline soil, which the recipe for that is just going to be like some regular, or actually not slightly saline, but if you have some regular dirt, and you combine it with a pinch of salt, then you will, or with a piece of salt, then you will get saline soil, of which you can then plant saltwort on. Saltwort is going to be useful for making some of the foods that we'll be discussing, as well as additive ingredients that you might want to use. And in order to get this to grow, you'll probably need to make sure that your saline soil is good. But if it starts progressing, you'll notice that your saline soil over time will start losing color and become slightly saline and not grow any further, besides it just kind of taking all the salt out of the soil that it's planted on. Therefore, you'll have to take a pinch of salt, which is just 9 regular salt. Think of these as like nuggets, and salt as ingots, and the blocks as, well, blocks. But if you then right-click on slightly saline soil with some pinches of salt, you can then re-salinize it. I think that's a word. I don't really know. But you can therefore salt it back up. You can then grab yourself a pair of shears, and you can right-click this and get yourself a bunch of this saltwort here, and then use it for ingredients for some of your other foods. Not all your foods, just a few, and it has its own properties on its own. If you eat it, if you're hungry, it'll give you regeneration 2 for a couple seconds. It's just a little tiny thing here. You can see it just gives like a half a hunger, nothing really fancy. But what else can you do with salt water? You put it in a furnace and you will get yourself effervescent ash, which can be used to make salt stars and all sorts of other muffins and mineral mud. And it's like, well, what the heck is all that stuff? Don't worry too much about it right now. Just know that right now, that is how you would basically grow salt water. And you can bone meal in an area if you have a bunch of these together, and you can salt each individual block as you need to. And you can actually grow salt. You might be able to have some, I will show how to do that as well, but let's get into one of the machines so you can make your own salt if you don't run into something as fortunate as that salt bed, because they're not as common as you might think in the default settings. And that's an evaporator. So an evaporator is made with just some cobblestone and a cauldron, nothing really fancy there. You can just take a little bit of water, and inside you'll have to have some kind of fuel on the left, and you'll get an output on the right, and then you just take some water and you'll get some particle effects that it's working. You see that it's smoking down here and it's got steam coming out the top, and it'll over time start making pinches of salt. Just from a bucket of water will make 1 pinch of salt. And there's no easy way to pipe this in, but there are multiple ways, vanilla style, that you can do this. And I'm going to show you how you can do this. First, a warning. If you have an evaporator, and you see here I have this. Let's take one of these blocks of coal out, and I'm going to put this, well, here, I've got a water bucket. Put it in there. I'm going to put this on top. Let's put a block of coal on top of this where the steam was coming out. And what's going to happen? Well, it's starting to build up pressure on the side here, which is not a good thing. You don't want it to build up pressure, because when it does, bad things happen. Big bada boom. So yeah, a word of warning, explosive machines are possible. But you think, all right, well, is there any other way of getting water in there if I can't pipe it in? Yes, you can actually just kind of drop it in on the top. Now, if you take a couple of buckets with an evaporator, and I've got some blocks of coal in here, and I'm not going to block it with a solid this time. I'm going to leave a liquid over it. Well, let's put a couple buckets, one on either side. It'll make an infinite water source over the top, right? It will automatically drop in. Not a problem. See? Pretty cool. But you'll notice over time that if I wasn't using a block of coal, but either way, it's not progressing. The reason being, there's no place for the steam to escape. It's just kind of bubbling or something like that, or putting itself out. If you had some more standard material that would be burning, then it would be a little easier to see. But it's just stopping and starting all over again because the liquid is kind of putting it out. So how do you make this work? Well, you automate the liquid going in every so often. In this case, I have a piston. And if you know anything about your vanilla stuff, which I barely do, but I will say that the piston arm, if you put this over top of one of these things, it will actually allow it to breathe in a way. So therefore I can, if I look in here, I've got some sticks, I've got some salt already done, pull the lever and some water goes in, right? And you think, all right, well, look, it's not progressing because of that. Well, pull the lever again. And there we go. So it's automatically going to do this. You can have this on a redstone timer that goes like once every minute or something like that, so that you will constantly be getting your pinches of salt, because it does take a little bit of time for it to actually burn through there. And you will need to have a fuel going on. But it is one easy way of getting a pinch of salt. If you hook yourself up some kind of redstone timer with a piston going over this so that it will actually allow the steam to escape and it will automatically refill with water every so often, then yeah, you're going to be good to go. And as you see here, it's actually having progress going, and you should be able to get a pinch of salt. So that's how you can find a bunch of salt, how you can make a bunch of salt, some of the dangers of making salt, and some of the blocks that you can make. What else can you do with it? Well, let's go over here and you'll see that we have salt. And I have a cow and a horse. Oh my goodness, they like the salt. Yep, it's just like a salt lick, so they will follow it just as if it is their preferred food, and you can use it to feed the animals if you so desire as well. So that's just kind of one little benefit for, working with some of your vanilla Minecraft critters in this case. Now, what else can you do with this salt in this mod? And that is armor. Well, kind of. It's more a mud mask. If you look here, we've got a head mud mask, body mud mask, legs, and foot mud masks. And they're made with mineral mud, which, yeah, they're just this little clumpy stuff here, which is made simply from just blocks, or you take some salt, some effervescent ash, clay, and a bit of charcoal to get 1 piece. And you're thinking, well, wait a minute, Vallen, I saw that each one only gives 1 piece of armor. That's it. If I switch my game mode back to survival, you'll notice that all my hearts are yellow. That's because this armor offers a little something extra. It will give you a very, very slow regenerative effect, as well as an extra meter of health. So all these hearts down at the bottom, that's my 2nd health bar. So let me take this foot mud mask off. Ouch, that hurt me. Why did it hurt me? Because I just peeled off part of my health. And yep, you can see I am now pulling more and more off. There we go. And I'm back down to my normal health bar. If I put these back on, it will use some of the saturation off my food bar. I happen to have eaten something very saturating recently, and therefore it will replenish and give me another health bar to work with. And it doesn't have much durability, but it's gonna work really good, actually. There we go. I just took a few hits. Ow, ow, ow. Let me get a little bit of some food. And I can just eat that, and I will slowly regenerate my health as well. But if you look, my mud mask did not take any damage from the fall, and it is currently replenishing my health and so on from that. But if I jump in this water here, let's see. Let's take a look at, look at this. It is just mud that has been put on you. That's pretty much it. So if you are underwater, then this stuff is going to suddenly start taking some damage, if only from the water, because it will wash off over time. Now, what else is there that there can be offered with this mod? One of which is a Rainmaker. Now, I do currently have a weather mod installed, which is kind of conflicting with it. But if you're high enough in the sky so that when you launch this rocket and it explodes, if it explodes above the cloud level, then it would create rain in that area. Now, in this case, it's not going to because, like I said, I have a weather mod that is interfering with that. I apologize for the lack of demonstration. But typically that will cause a little kind of showery effect above it, and then it will shortly create a rain storm to appear in your area. But in this case, it's not going to. What else can the salt mod do besides food? And that is going to be, it'll kill witches. So let's put a witch out here. Oh, she is not happy. What else will it do? It will kill slimes as well. Let's spawn some slimes. They take damage just by being on a salty block of some sort. So these guys are not going to be happy. It's just instantly going, well, not instantly. It will kill them slowly over time. You notice the witch is still going because she's got her health potions. That slime might actually escape off the island. He was taking damage. But there is another thing, and that is if you get some of these salt crystals and you actually have a witch run into them, she'll break the salt crystals but instantly die. So yeah, the salt is your friend when it comes to killing off witches and slimes. So if you have some kind of Tinker's Construct island floating up in the sky above you or nearby, putting a bunch of salt blocks around should help kind of clear up a bunch of those guys. Plus, snow will melt when it's near these the salt blocks, and there is a way that you can grow some of your own salt and not just use the version that I showed you with the machine. If you take some of your found salt blocks, like I have here, let me actually turn on the light. If you have some salt blocks here set in kind of a checkerboard pattern with one below, put water around the outer edges, and you wait for the center to grow into full-grown salt crystals. You use a Silk Touch pickaxe, and you can then pick this up and get yourself some salt crystals, which then you can turn it into a pinch of salt. It's a very slow process, but it is one way of doing it. That was the original method of how to create more salt instead of just harvest it in the world. So I do recommend that you try and set yourself up some kind of automation so that you can get yourself water-made salt much easier. All right, so now we've covered just about everything in the mod except for the main use of it, and that is going to be all this wonderful food. Now, the food in the salt mod takes a lot of vanilla stuff and enhances it. That's all it really does. It gives you some more options using vanilla items. For instance, you take some cooked steak. Let's grab one here. Salty steak. The recipe is just a pinch of salt, which is the equivalent of a nugget. Remember my analogy I was using there? With steak, will make you salty steak, which takes it from, 4 hunger up to 4.5 hunger, which doesn't sound like much to begin with. But if I hold the shift key here, you can see it restores 8 hunger and 0.8 saturation. And that's quite a bit of saturation. That's of your entire hunger meter bar, that's 1 is an entire hunger meter, 0.8. So that's, 80% of that bar. Now, if I look at the salty steak, oh my gosh, it gives you 9 hunger and 13.8 bars worth of saturation. Now, there is a limit on how much saturation you can get, but this is going to max out your saturation pretty darn good. This is one of the more extreme examples of what you can do. The steak is probably one of the best items that you can get with a pinch of salt. Just adding it to it, not a problem. It's really, really good. And you can do this with a lot of the other standard stuff, like your, pork chops, mutton, potatoes, chicken, rabbit, fish, and this is raw fish, salty fish here, and you can also cook it, salty cooked fish, and get a little bit more hunger refill out of it. Salty salmon, cooked salmon, clownfish, and so on, and it just keeps going. You can see all the things in here. This is just an egg from a chicken with a pinch of salt, and you get yourself one of these, a soft-boiled egg, which is really good. You know how often chickens, have that stuff coming out, so that's really good. And you can even make corned beef out of rotten flesh. But it will cost a lot of salt. Almost an entire pile of salt will be needed to turn it into corned beef from rotten flesh, which will lose the hunger effect, give you a decent amount of food and saturation as well. And one other item to not forget about is going to be the muffin. It says here, for dessert. What that means is that if you have 1.5 hunger or less left on your hunger bar, and you eat a muffin to top off your hunger bar, bon appetit. You should get some kind of little message down here, and 2 minutes of full saturation. 2 minutes. And this is because you ate a muffin as your last item to fill up your hunger bar. So that should help keep you sated for quite some time. Therefore, you can run around, do whatever kind of intense stuff you need to do, or excavating and whatnot. And therefore, you're going to benefit from 2 full minutes of nonstop saturation, giving you a lot of healing, a lot of mining, a lot of running and jumping, and all because you finished off your meal with a muffin. Now, there are some other options besides just your standard meals, and that is you've got your non-stackable bowl meals. You've got your, the stews up here, which, of course, like salty mushroom stew. It's just a regular stew. You've got this here, which is a salty rabbit stew, which, as in, regular Minecraft, it just adds a salt benefit to it. And of course, salty stewed vegetables, which takes like a vegetable stew and makes it a salty variant, which can give you some stuff. But these don't stack because they are in bowls. You also have like your soups. You've got your salads as well, which you can make from all the different ingredients. And then, of course, you've got your pickled mushroom, which is just a bunch of mushrooms, a pinch of salt, and a bottle of water will get you this one here, which is actually really good. It's not bad at all. But like I said, none of these ones are going to stack. They're all single-use stuff that will take up 1 inventory slot, but at least they can give you some variety, a little bit of different things, potentially early game to really get on there. And then you've got your entire pies, like a carrot pie. While the recipe on here is 2 carrots, sugar, and an egg, most of these are going to have a similar themed recipe like an apple pie, 2 apples, sugar, and egg, etc. You can salmon pie, guess it's going to have salmon, wheat, salt, egg. You get the idea. And these ones can stack, and therefore you can have a lot of them, and they should give you a decent amount as well. As before, though, look at the salty steak, 9 and 13.8. This one here, 9 and 9.6. So the salty steak is actually simpler and easier to make, but this one is fairly renewable because you can catch salmon relatively easily with a fishing rod. You can grow wheat. Eggs keep on coming out of chickens, no problem. But the steak itself, you'd have to have yourself a breeding farm, which in modded Minecraft shouldn't be that difficult. Then we get into the really, really good foods. Not that these ones weren't already amazing foods. And honestly, the fact that, sometimes when you're on a server and things are lagging and you're chewing on like a carrot for like what seems like 2 minutes or something like that, only to get 1 or 2 food hunger restored. These really take a lot of the pain out of that because you only have to eat one thing and it will pretty much get you set. But you've got things like this. Steak with saltwort. The recipe, of course, is steak, saltwort, and a bowl will get you this, and it'll give you 5 seconds of regeneration. So any of these foods here, cooked pork chop with saltwort will get you regeneration. And you've got your lamb, of course, will get you regeneration as well. But if you go into here, we start getting into things more unique. Saltwort pie. Egg, wheat, 2 saltworts will get you regeneration for 5 seconds. Those are the real basic ones. The really nicer stuff is going to be this. Herring under a fur coat. It sounds terrible, but it gives you haste 2 and 3 food pops. Haste 2 for 40 seconds, mind you. And it does require a bunch of different variety of foods, but it's great for mining. Then, of course, you can always saltify that and increase it even further, make it 1 minute instead of 40 seconds and a bit more hunger. So it's great. It's gonna, work well with the fact that you need the haste so that you can mine things a bit faster, as well as your hunger is going to go down faster because of that mining. Now, we also have a few last items here, and that is this here, fizzy drink. This is just a bottle of water and effervescent ash, which of course is made from saltwort tossed in a furnace, making your effervescent ash. And you drink this and it removes spells and extinguishes the fire. So it will take away any kind of spell effects or things that you have going on the sidebar here, negative effects and so on. Plus it'll put you out if you're on fire. So that's not bad. Have a little bit of some kind of effervescent drink. And then you've got pickled ferns, gives you resistance for 40 seconds. And it's just a couple ferns, pinch of salt, and a water bottle will make you a pickled fern. And of course it restores a little bit of hunger as well. So that's really good. And then we've got fermented saltwort, which gives you regeneration 3, 2.5 hunger, and that regeneration 3 is for a half a minute. That's really strong, but it is 5 saltwort, a gas tier in a bottle. So it's quite an investment you have going on there. And then things that you may also just find in the mod, some escargot may drop from something, and it's going to be the equivalent of like rotten flesh, as well as powdered milk you might be able to use. Combine powdered milk with a water bucket and you'll get yourself a milk bucket. But those are things that you'd have to find in the world. And I think that's pretty much going to be it for me covering the SaltyMod, which adds a really cool variety of foods, options, exploration, and just new and interesting things throughout Minecraft. And I really, really like this one a lot. So if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe, and as always, spread the mischief to others if you think they'll enjoy this content too. And until next time, folks, I'll see ya.